I call Clayton Mitchell.
Mr Speaker, it's a great pleasure to rise on behalf of New Zealand First to take a call and speak to the Wildlife Powers Amendment Bill. And in all the years, I suppose 2 years now that I've been speaking in the House, I don't think there's been one time that I've actually given a genuine nod of approval to the Minister, Maggie Barry, for any legislation or views that she's brought forward. But today I'm going to give you a genuine, sincere, genuine nod of approval, because I think this bill is quite good, and the amendments made in the committee say, I know, you're going all red, it's like you're blushing. But the reality is, sir, I think the committee have done a great job in making some amendments that are here before us today in the Local Government and Environments Committee, particularly around extending those powers from not only full-time dock rangers, sir, but to fish and game rangers as well. And I have to lament some of what Eugenie Sage has said in relation to the funding, because I think that is a real issue, and I'll touch on that. But the essence of the bill, sir, goes some way towards tightening up on poachers and people that are abusing our wildlife, because at the end of the day, tourism, which is our largest GDP provider and our biggest export, is looking to absolutely grow exponentially over the next decade and more, and that is largely because of our unique flora and fauna and, of course, our native species that people want to come and see and be part of. And if we allow the proliferation of and degradation and the taking of species illegally, and we don't empower our people to actually enforce the law, then clearly that is just going to come to the demise of what we hold absolutely pure, our 100% pure New Zealand brand that the world cherish and we should be cherishing too. This goes some way towards enabling that to happen, sir. The ability in basic terms to prevent an event from happening, so for a dock ranger or a fish and game ranger to be able to step in, and if they feel that there is something that is going to take place that is potentially illegal, they can actually involve themselves in that situation as a good step. Stopping and being able to retain somebody if they are in the middle of illegal activities or likely to be involved in illegal activities is good. And the reasonable stoppage time is the key word, being reasonable. Whether or not that goes far enough will obviously come out in case law when that is first tested, and perhaps the government would like to consider putting more definition and clarification about what is fair and what is reasonable. Of course, we don't want to be going into litigation with people that are illegally taking and plundering our natural resource and then having to justify what a fair and reasonable amount of time was. That could actually open up all sorts of legislative issues around the time frames in which they were held. But still a good measure, sir. The ability for rangers, full-time rangers, to be able to seize equipment and seize assets from poachers or potential poachers is a great idea. Enabling a ranger to be able to take a laptop or computer or cell phone to use as evidence, excuse me, sir, is absolutely paramount. How can you build a case without the ability of gathering that intel and information that can actually go towards indicting those people and obviously convicting them of an offence, sir? And finally, just like the powers of police, to enable the police to get genuine information from those offenders, obviously name, date of birth is essential, addresses and proof of identification. Otherwise you're out in the bush, you're looking and talking to a potential poacher, all going swimmingly until they give you an erroneous address of person and no way for them to check up on that. These sorts of pragmatic steps certainly have been accoladed by New Zealand First, and we look forward to those being implemented. And I note the time in which 28 days after the royal assent is given that this bill will actually be introduced. So we would like to see this bill expedited through the House. Again, a good piece of legislation, as it was last night with the Charities Amendment Bill. We'd like to see good, solid, robust legislation that has full support of the House to be pushed through in some sort of pace, unlike some of the other legislation that we've seen be put through in the past. Eugenie Sage mentions that our fish are not protected under this Act. Well, I beg to differ, because we've got most of our native birds covered under this Act. all of our native reptiles, particularly the tuatara, which is a targeted species on the international black market, and whether our own fellow New Zealanders are actually exploiting this creature or if it's an international group that are doing it. Regardless, sir, the tuatara is a very, very precious species and should be looked after. We've got 2 native species of frogs, the gold and I think the green, the bell frogs. Yeah. We're not very creative with our naming though, are we? Green and gold. North Island, South Island, Stewart Island, that was a guy that, Anyway, bats, of course, we've got a native species of bat, but there are 8 marine fish species that are protected, and marine invertebrates and certain specified native land, all covered in under this Act. So it does go some way. We do have concerns that our native species are being slowly but surely brought into extinction, and we need to do everything we absolutely possibly can to ensure that they retain for future generations and they grow and flourish in this beautiful land of ours. And certainly we could talk about some other aspects of that, but I do want to go back to probably the overarching issue here. Good legislation, a step in the right direction, a modernisation, if you will, sir, but funding is absolutely paramount. And we have seen since 2009 a reduction in DOC funding of $60 million. Absolutely, it's here in black and white. We could come over there, I can table if you like, but it's actually available if you just look for it. 2009 we had $403 million. In 2015 we had $342 million. In 2008, our capital expenditure within the Department of Conservation was $98 million, and now in 2015 it was $23.5 million, sir. Now, that causes some serious concerns in relation to health and safety. We have seen our number of DOC rangers being reduced from 809 down to 637. We're expecting our frontline officers to do more for less. And now Maggie Barry likes to chip in and be part of the conversation. No, you just don't like the reality that this is the truth and you're trying to shut down the truth from the people of New Zealand. This is the frustration that we have, New Zealanders, because ministers won't face the facts that you're being completely underfunded and potentially putting our DOC rangers in harm by underfunding them, making them do twice as much for half the money. The reality is, sir, New Zealand First has some serious concerns. This government has overcommitted themselves, have not budgeted their finances properly, and causing all sorts of issues in the long term in many sectors, which I won't segue into, but I might just talk about housing, police, corrections and a range of other things. But specifically, sir, in the Department of Conservation needs to be seriously looked at. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand First will be supporting this through the final stages. We'd like to see it hurried through. We would certainly like to put the acid on the Minister Maggie Barry to seriously put funding as a priority for our most precious of items, our land and our native species, because at the moment under this government it doesn't seem to be a priority, and you're making our frontline officers do more for less, and it's absolutely in black and white, and you can deny it all you like. But at the end of the day, you've had your lovely speech, and we enjoyed it because listening to Maggie Barry, of course, is like getting beat up with toilet paper. It's just so soft and smooth and silky. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll end my contribution there.